Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcia Hovey, Executive Director of Cadre. I want to welcome you to day one of our annual symposium this year, focusing on disaster recovery, short-term and long-term. And we'll be here for a couple of hours discussing how we're planning to move forward. I'm very excited that we're finally getting to take forward our planning for long-term and short-term disaster recovery. Let me go to the next slide. So if you could please put your name and your organization name in the chat, then that way we can put the organization and the name to the face. And then we're running Otter AI and Zoom today, the closed captioning, so you can go to the bottom of your screen and you should see, it might be visible, or it might be under the little dots. If you want to activate closed captioning, you can do that there. And if it's not working, please let me know and we'll stop and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. You can ask questions anytime if you put them in the chat. We're going to hold the questions until the end as I turn this over to Jenny, and then the reference materials will be on the Cadre website in, at the end. And I will put a link in the chat for that as well, so that you'll be able to see the video link, the PowerPoint, and any other resources that get referenced during the presentation. And now I'm starting out with a word from our sponsors. And this symposium is actually sponsored by Santa Clara County Emergency Management Performance Grant, and we want to thank them for giving us the opportunity to put on these presentations and bring in the speakers that we have today. But we also have other sponsors, and this is important information. So even though they're no longer paying us to do this, I still want everyone to know that the MyShake app is free. It's an early alert, early warning before an earthquake happens. If it's a 4.5 or above, everyone should have this on their phone so they're not caught by surprise when the ground starts to shake. It gives you a little bit of extra time to mentally prepare and to get yourself ready to drop cover and hold on wherever you are. Those links, you can scan the QR code, but you can also go on our website on the earthquake page, and it's all there. In addition to that, on the earthquake page, we have a training, a video, and some resources that are translated into 20 languages. We will do Train the Trainer if you want to take this material and use it as your own. We're also promoting wildfire air quality. So on our preparedness website, there is an air quality section. And in that section, it's your one-stop shop to share with the community all of the different resources that can help inform you about the current air quality, and also how to make a do-it-yourself fan filter for your house. So this is just a quick way for you to gather information without having to Google search a bunch of sites in the middle of an emergency. And then finally, we're on that page also, we have 5 videos on wildfire safety, from the alerts, evacuations, what to expect, immigrant support and disasters, and access and functional needs. And now I'm going to turn this over to our newest staff member, Jennifer Campbell, who is our disaster recovery specialist for Cadre, and will be leading this presentation and leading us into having a disaster recovery framework that we can all be very proud of. Jennifer, put you in the spotlight.
Hello, everybody. I think I've met quite a few of you over the last few weeks. I would love to, first of all, just say it's an honor to be working with Santa Clara County VOAD and Santa Clara County, and all of you partners. It's really a delight. I'll talk about myself some other time, but just so you have a feel for where I came from, I had my birth into this space back about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, with the Woolsey Fire. I live in the Santa Monica Mountain area of Los Angeles County, a lot of unincorporated, and I met John Chavez, and here we are. And so that should summarize it for many of you. FEMA saw an opportunity to grab a community member, and they did, and I was a willing participant most of the time. I transitioned over to Church World Service, who is one of our national partners who actually paved the way for the National VOAD. And I worked for them on a project for their disaster space for about a little over a year. And I was looking for where I could next bring my skill set that's developed over the last 6 years, and here I am. So that's the fast and dirty Jenny Campbell. Very passionate about relationship management, networking. Really, relationships are the #1 priority in any organization. It's about the people and how we all come together to support the 4 C's of the National VOAD. So what we're really trying to do, first of all, I mentioned John Chavez, and we have our partners on the phone or on the line. And if we could have everybody, I know David, I see you, Valerie, John, Jackie, if you could all turn on your screens, just so that as I introduce you, you can at least wave and blow a kiss or whatever. So thank you to our guests for being here. And I would love to introduce everyone. John Chavez is with FEMA. He is the voluntary agency liaison. Many of you know John. We've got Valerie Mahanovich from the California State OES, Office of Emergency Services, voluntary agency liaison. Again, these are familiar faces to many of you. Jackie Cosi Tamayo. She's a very familiar face to me because we worked together in Los Angeles before she came up to you all. She is with the Office of Emergency Management and is the liaison into the VOAD. And if I've messed anything up, or if you want to augment what I've said with your titles, please jump all over me. I rehearsed. And then we also have David Rower with us. He is the Long-Term Recovery Group Chair for the National VOAD, and is also very involved with an organization that is very near and dear to my heart for many reasons, Presbyterian Disaster. And he sits on the national response team and is on the ministry team for leading the long-term recovery. So that said, you've got some great people here who are going to pull a lot of threads together. So I'm going to summarize our objectives, and then we're going to dive in to letting these amazing people do way better than I. So our goal is to the cadre's goal with regard to building a committee, keeping it really simple and calling it a committee, okay, for now, because I think that's what we're all really familiar with is, committees do the work. Cadre will build a sustainable disaster recovery collaborative that stands ready to mentor and support long-term recovery groups in future disasters. It's really that simple. We want to do this by ensuring strong partnerships and inspiring future leadership, consistent relationship building at the core of all of that. Building the cadre support network capacity is really critical. You are all amazing. Now, bring your friends, bring your colleagues, bring the people that you already work with out there that aren't part of the VOAD network yet. With the more people, the quicker the recovery, the more people we can help. Start building a disaster recovery arm of a committee collaborative. Again, the committee is going to decide where they go with this, but that's meant to mentor and support, okay, the long-term recovery groups in future disasters. This is really just meant to be an overview. What I'm saying right now, I see Marcia going back between the slides, but the bottom line is that this isn't a slide because everybody's going to speak to this. You're going to see slides. I just want you to hear it and not be too worried about looking at a screen right now, as opposed to just really hearing it organically. What do we really want to do? It's basic. Let's all come together to ensure that our community can recover and move into long-term recovery as expeditiously and sustainably as possible. And how do we do that? Okay. And that leads me to introducing our government organizations. They're going to speak about what their role is and how they interact with the VOAD, and what are the benefits of the VOAD to them and their organizations. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce John Chavez with FEMA.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Nice to see some of you that I've worked with before, and nice to see some of you that I may work with. And as far as the FEMA Voluntary Agency Liaison, you see us come around about, and we are basically, I know I am, a disaster gypsy. Go around the country spreading the news about how things work. The Voluntary Agency Liaison is out of the FEMA Individual Assistance Group. This is when there is a federal declaration. This is the group that gives the funding to individuals that are have been affected by the disaster. And we have the Individuals and Households program. So I come around and basically I'm a community organizer. Next slide is going to tell you the mission statement of Val. That means turn on the next slide. There you go. The mission statement of the Voluntary Agency Liaison. We're out there to establish, foster, and maintain relationships among government, voluntary, faith-based, and community partners. And this is to support the delivery of services by getting the community together to address disaster-related unmet needs. And this is the big thing. We bring with you, next slide, please. We go ahead and we do various things to assist in the community. What do Vals do? They go surfing on their days off. But the next slide actually tells you more about what Vals do. And that is, we come in and we basically will help. You'll see us right away in the recovery phase of a disaster. As you know, there are 4 phases: response, recovery, preparedness, and mitigation. And so the Vals assist the community. We come in and we talk about things that we have done. We use practices and all kinds of things that we have done throughout other communities, and we share these with you. We assist in the development of long-term recovery groups, and this also means we work with the case managers, help them, give them information on the applicants that they are assisting. And once again, that term, sharing best practices, this is the most important thing that a Val can do. We steal shamelessly from each other, and we use what works everywhere we go. We want to let people know to do that. And I preach stealing shamelessly. Don't try to recreate things. We come in and we talk about the best recovery strategies that have worked, and we make sure that we can apply those and have them help us out. We also go around and look at the various sectors in the community, not just the established voluntary organizations active in disaster, the VOAD, such as Cadre, or your VOAD, wherever you may be. But we go ahead and we look around and ask. We go ahead and looking at what can be done to help these people. Are they going to need home repair? Are they going to need their home rebuilt? Or most importantly, right away, debris removal and looking at immediate unmet needs. So we, the Val, come in and make the community aware, hey, there's lots of resources. Let's use those resources when we are working on recovery. Most importantly, though, we help establish the long-term recovery groups. Next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned the various phases of disasters. VOADs are pretty much blue sky type of situation. You're sitting there working and helping people prepare for what may be coming. So the voluntary agencies come in and work with the VOADs in giving community education about preparedness techniques, mitigation measures, and then planning, training, exercises. Today's Cadre event is an exercise. You do that. All the VOADs that we work with, we get them to prepare people, make sure things are coming along. We want to engage the whole community and determining what's out there. We do ask for people that can bring money, muscle, and materials. We can get those people to bring those things to the table. That helps us in setting up for the community to recovery. On this slide, I have this is a different slide than what I was prepared for, but that's okay because I'm good at faking it, right? Okay, so here we go. I have a question down there. I thought it was in red, and it says, "Do you?" I'm pointing to all of you. Do you have a go kit? This is one big question in preparedness. Most of us on this call are emergency managers, and we should have a go kit in our car, in our house, and our family members should do that as well. So that's one of the things the Val does when he comes around is, hey, awareness, folks, we're emergency managers. Let's be prepared. Let's make sure that we and our family members have go kits in our cars and in our homes, meaning emergency supplies, water, flashlights, money, because the ATMs are going to be out. So think about that and make sure that you're prepared. So as far as the Val's coming in, we bring what we can. We want to look at bringing money, muscle, material to the group. Make sure that we are aware with that. Have our training sessions where we can collaborate and communicate with each other. In fact, the next slide is going to talk about just that. And I'm waiting for the next slide. There you go. We talk about the Vals and our roles in meetings and with the agencies. Well, Vals come out and we do a lot of talking. We like to lead from behind. As I mentioned at the beginning, Vals are there to support. We're not there to say, you must do this. No, we're there to say, hey, this is what we've done. This is what we can do. So we basically lead from behind. We manage expectations. We share those best practices. And we talk about how partnering is so important. Next slide, please. And the whole thing about that, go ahead, it's coming. Honest, there you go. Okay, I'm a bit confused on my part in that I had must have sent the wrong presentation, but we're fine because I know what I'm talking about here. The big thing is we need to communicate, collaborate, cooperate, and coordinate. And that's what the National VOAD talks about. And you're going to learn more about that as you progress in working with Cadre. And the National VOAD partners do those 4 C's. We got the 3 M's, we got the 4 C's. So these are the things that we as a community need to do in order to be prepared, in order to respond, in order to help people in recovering. So the Vals, we come in, we offer all that we can, all that we have learned, and that's to help you and your organizations be successful when you respond to help those in your community. And with that, I thank you. And I wish I was going out surfing right now, but I'd probably drown. So thank you again for inviting me. And we have our next presenter.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you so much. And apologies on my part. I'll have to go back and see what I did because I sent Marcia the presentation. I'm sorry.
Not to worry. I can wing it well.
You're awesome. And at the end, what I'm going to do, I have a couple of things I want to pull together with all of our Vals who you'll hear from. And I think it'll kind of bring together any confusion that you or things you might be thinking. So let's see if I can nail it for you all. And I'll introduce Valerie Mahanovich now with Cal OES as our Val.
Good morning. You can go on to the first slide. Okay. Oops. So my role is very, very similar to John. So I don't want to be redundant, but we are Vals, so we do kind of similar things. It's kind of that degree of separation. So I'm statewide. I'm the voluntary agency liaison, just one of me for the whole state of California. And when there, I am kind of that link between local communities, VOADs, government, and Cal OES. And sometimes when FEMA is not here, I'm also that link to our federal government. So kind of that degree of separation between federal government, local government, whatever, kind of the person in the middle. The voluntary agency liaison is part of the individual assistance unit at California Office of Emergency Services. And my role is, and the individual assistance role is to do a lot of that pre-disaster coordination and training. And then once that the bells ring or county reaches out to us and says, hey, we need help, bring in that local assistance center. We will work with our players. We have individual assistant reaching out to our state government entities, DMV and others, to come to your local community to provide assistance. And then the voluntary agency liaison, I have a long, long list of volunteer groups that may not be in your community, but are always interested in coming to help people one-on-one when we need that local assistance center, when there is a fire, a flood, whatever happens in that local community, we bring them and support them at their local assistance center. And we're constantly getting inquiries from the public. I think a lot of times people confuse us with, when it says individual assistance, it's like, great, financial, we can help you. We're everywhere, we don't go away, but what we don't offer are actual direct programs, but we are, again, a link to all of those. We go in and do those preliminary damage assessments when a disaster occurs. We coordinate those, so we get the staffing to come out and look and see if there's enough, to declare a federal disaster, or maybe an SBA Small Business Association support. And then the voluntary agency liaison, I'm just that one person that sits in and is that link to all the voluntary agency liaisons. I mean, the VOADs and COADs and cadres in the state. Next slide. And I kind of said that we just continue to foster that strong support. Truth be told, I ran a VOAD for 15 years as Sacramento region. Before I came to the state, it was always like us and them, and the government's not thinking enough of us. We do our hard work, and just that feeling that we're this island out there, but part of Sacramento Region VOAD. And then I was also part of the exec team for Northern California VOAD. So being able to connect all our agencies together, and part of the reason I went to the state is to continue to advocate for all the hard work you do and make sure that our government knows that, yes, disasters begin and end with voluntary agencies, but the value of beginning and ending in voluntary agencies, and that you do it. You do it without most of the time funding for the government or others. You do it because it's not just your job, but your passion. So we support long-term recovery groups during disaster. We help form them, as John said. Our job is to bring in those partners to a long-term recovery group. And also we support VOADs. I've been asked quite a few times to support the startup of VOADs throughout the state, VOADs, COADs, whatever you want to call them. And I get calls all the time, what funding is out there for us? And I'm constantly on the lookout for funding for VOADs and long-term recovery groups. And next slide. And then again, as I mentioned, we're that critical link between community and government. We work to provide those quick and efficient disaster relief as well as we can. And we just support, we're here to stay. So I'm still supporting disasters that happened in 2020, 2021, 22. And then last year we had, I think it was 38 out of all 58 counties had a disaster declaration. So when I can, I'm supporting those primary counties that still need help, and currently working to support in person. This is our first year. I came on as a COVID val. So I did a lot of support virtually on Zoom. And this is the first year I've actually been deployed in the field to support San Diego with their flood relief. Next. And then we work during all phases of an emergency. So we're, that preparedness phase is when we're attending the VOAD meetings. Response is when we're supporting the local assistance centers and bringing our initial voluntary groups together. Also, it includes muck outs and cleanups and, in the very beginning stage, getting those voluntary groups in there that can support, if it's a flood, muck outs and cleaning up. Fire, we don't deploy voluntary agencies to do any of that debris post-fire. That is the only thing that voluntary agencies are allowed to do, and that's more recovery, is do that personal property or PP, personal property recovery, where you go in and sift and maybe you find a wedding ring or something of value in those ashes. And then recovery, that's supporting long-term recovery in the community. Next slide. And then I think I kind of just mentioned it also. I don't want to be redundant, but we do support VOAD, building VOADs. We support maintaining VOADs as best we can. And we attend those meetings and continue to support any initiatives with our VOAD community. And we stay on top of those things. And again, like John says, we always talk about preparedness, and probably as emergency managers and probably as people who support emergencies, we are the worst people to be prepared. I mean, how many have go kits? I don't even think I have. If the go kit I have is probably with my kids' clothes when they were 4 years old, they're now 22 and 25. So I am the worst. And I've talked to so many emergency managers. We're the worst at being prepared, but I can't stress being prepared in some way, shape, or form for when something strikes, because you just never know. Next slide. And then response, again, we're there to support in so many ways. And from the individual assistance unit to the VAL, and we will support those local assistance centers. And if we get a FEMA declaration, the disaster recovery centers, we try to get a VOAD present at one of those, a local assistance center, if they have the bandwidth, a disaster recovery center. It's so important to have some connection to community resources during a disaster. And, we will support the county for whatever they need. And then there's just that great connection of having the VOAD piece, that link to recovery, the link to all of the resources that are available to a county and community, and have them there from the get-go, supporting your community. Next. And then recovery, like, it's hard to get rid of us unless you want to get rid of us. We're there for the long haul. We're going to help you both. And when there's a FEMA declaration, I always hope I get John as our FEMA VAL, because he's amazing. But we assist with that formation of that long-term recovery group, sharing those best practices, philanthropic resources. There's just so many things that we learn now that change with agencies, and there's new agencies and foundations. We're going to try to help bring that money, muscle, and materials to the table. And then just long-term assistance. Like I said, I'm still getting, especially disaster case managers, they have a lot of questions. They want to help people. And even we still have disaster case managers from our 2021 fires that are asking for help and assistance. And sometimes it's simple assistance with, who do I contact at the state about debris, or how do I get access to this on my property? So we try to be that link. There's a lot of resources here at Cal OES and our recovery support functions that I can get people in touch with. So if I can't answer the question, I'm going to try my best to find someone who can. And again, as always, truly, I wear this state badge, but I'm one of you. I advocate for your communities and the voluntary groups. That's where my heart is. It always will be there. And even though I'm part of government, that's the beauty of being a VAL, is that we advocate for all of you. Next slide. And then that's the end of it. And that's how I did type my contact information in the chat. And that's how you can ask those general questions of our individual assistance unit. And just a reminder that we work closely with the counties, and a county, a VOAD and VOAD partners that are strong connections with their counties is one that's going to succeed. And I can't say enough about that, except that our experience right now in San Diego is like Cadre, they have a strong VOAD in San Diego, and the recovery is so much quicker. They have a seat in the Emergency Operations Center. They're there from the get-go, and they've been working collaboratively with the county since the very beginning. And therefore, we have long-term recovery group already starting. It was in January, and they were already meeting very early, not formally and officially, but we had VOAD and county and all the collaborating organizations. Not all of them are part of the VOAD. If it's a very specific community, bring those partners in and bring and fold them into the long-term recovery group. They may not be traditional partners, but they're going to be there for the long haul. And I can't stress enough how much quicker recovery is when everybody's working at the same table and together. There are communities that we're all still struggling from last year's floods because there wasn't that strong VOAD in place, VOAD, COED, whatever. It wasn't in place. And the recovery is so much slower. And so I had to say that. I can't say enough good things about having a VOAD in your community. I know you call it the Cadre, where I come from VOAD world, so I'm always going to call the VOAD, but to have that strong relationship in your community and a county that is very supportive is golden. And that's all I have.
Thank you. You're amazing. You actually, we planned this because it's the perfect transition. I'm going to introduce Jackie in a second. Before I do, I want to leverage something that that Valerie really highlighted. Okay, we've already heard, the commonalities between the agencies, right? And that's built in. That's meant to happen because we've got a liaison at every level: FEMA at the federal, state, Cal OES, and county. So what I'd like to do is, Valerie, I'm going to have you come back on because I want to look at your face. So just give me a second because I know you have to run too. I want to just highlight something Valerie said. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So Valerie said something about San Diego. I just want to highlight San Diego for a second and say, they have a very strong VOAD. They also have a component that we're developing here. And that's what's so lovely. And that's going to be something I talk about toward the end, is the community recovery committee, organization, collaborative. Okay. That's the component that is ready to stand up and that is sitting as part of their VOAD. Everybody, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So Valerie teed me up here, and I couldn't stop myself from just saying that right now. It's very important to highlight because that means you're ready to go. And that means you've already got a committee of people and resources with funding to hit the ground running for supporting long-term recovery groups, whether you do it yourself or you bring in the other cities that may have been affected and they form their own LTRGs. Okay. Valerie, I do want to just say that San Diego helped us develop our community recovery organization for Los Angeles. So we modeled ourselves after San Diego on a much grander scale. Okay. Valerie, you said something, and I think you mentioned in your slide, I wrote it down because it's important here before we jump to Jackie, is that you're that the VAL is the critical link between community and government. It's a super important statement for clarification and unification purposes, okay? Because I want to make sure that we understand. I wrote to myself, okay, and this is a question so that everybody can hear the answer. So if the VAL, federal, state, county, city, supports community, how does the VOAD complement you and vice versa? How are we not stepping on partnership toes, if you will? And how are we just implementing the 4 C's versus confusing partners? How does that look?
Oh, that's an interesting question. And what I meant to say is I'm that link between state government and local nonprofits. If that's what you're getting, I'm thinking your VOAD cadre should also be that strong link between the county and other local nonprofit partners, right? So you would know who to bring in, and anybody new, you bring them to that table when it comes to recovery. Kind of you're the community and having that strong relationship. I'll just bring up an example of, in Sacramento, we had VOED had a seat in the Emergency Operations Center. So when COVID hit, and that was our longest deployment in the EOC, was, we got a call like mid-March, state of emergency. You're coming, you're reporting, VOED's reporting to the EOC first thing tomorrow morning. So because we're short-staffed, it was me, and I grabbed a volunteer, and we were there for almost a month and a half. But as that key link, they came to me, the fire, law, all the folks that were in the EOC. Hey, Valerie, we need to talk to people in the Muslim community. Is there a way we can message, all those things under COVID, masking and all that stuff? Who do you know? Oh, great. I know of a group right here in Rancho Cordova. They're awesome. They are the key. And there's another food bank that links to this new Syrian community or whatever. So I hooked them right up to that. Okay, we're having trouble with another faith-based community that is meeting in person, and oh, here's a link, let's bring them together. So we were they didn't have to do, how does a food bank work? How does a food closet work? Who's the lead around here in Sacramento County? So we were able to, and then they explained a lot of mysteries to me about law enforcement, fire, and all that thing. So we had this great collaborative relationship. And so when our food banks had questions, how can you help us with that? We may need law enforcement at this long food line and it's getting rough. We were there to connect. We were kind of the person in the middle to just keep things going smoothly and keep the response going smoothly. Does that kind of help? And that's like at the local level, and at the state level, I would reach out to VALS for other assistance. And then mid-COVID, I left and went to the state.
It's really, I mean, what I hear is what I would expect to hear. And I really just wanted to clarify that for everybody, because you might go, well, wait, what's the VOAD's role versus the VAL's role with respect to those partnership organizations? Because everybody, every VAL is saying, look, it's, we're here to work on those relationships. And really what I want to highlight is that there are communities that don't have a VOAD. Those communities still have to recover. We are so fortunate to have a VOAD that's as strong as this one is and funded, because what you don't know probably is that most VOADs are not funded. They roller coaster. So I just really wanted to highlight that for everybody, because it's not a cookie cutter. Every community is different. And as my friend and colleague Erin Titus says, just because you've done one disaster, what's that mean? You've done one disaster, period. You haven't, there's no way you can take what you've learned other than the basics of relationships and roll into another disaster. You have to get to know the people. You have to understand the practice. You have to understand how things work. LA is definitely not San Diego, is not Santa Clara, is not Humboldt County. And is not Kentucky. So just kind of keep that in mind. And if you ever wonder, everyone, ask for clarification. It's never a given. There's never a period. It's always kind of a ... All right. I'm zipping it. Jackie Cosi-Tamayo from our county as liaison, please join us.
Good morning, everyone. I will be sharing my slide deck with everyone. Pretty much my whole presentation was done with my beautiful colleagues of Valerie and John. John, I'm glad to see you and be on the same platform with you once again. So as mentioned, Santa Clara County Office of Emergency Management has produced a new section. And the new section is because we understand the importance of the collaboration with our NGO and especially our VOAD project, which is the essence of my rescue. And many of you may not know me because I am new to Santa Clara County. However,
Jackie, this is Marcia. You're really garbled. Can you get closer to the mic, maybe?
absolutely, Marcia. Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Much better.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my apologies. So the idea of the liaison is not relatively new, as Jenny has mentioned. We have worked in conjunction together in different scenes. So Many of you don't know me because I'm new to the Bay Area, but I have been an emergency manager for the city, the county, and even the special district level. So with the city of Los Angeles, with the county of Alameda, with their judicial system, and currently here at Santa Clara County. And the fun fact is, I actually started through community groups working with the Department of Recreation and Parks with LA City. And my main mission task was actually doing programming and recreation, working with the NGOs and elected officials for community development and programs for youth, seniors, and for a whole community approach. But was designated to lead the mass care initiative within the city of Los Angeles in the emergency management department. So for several years, for about approximately 10 years, I led the development and strength of the emergency management division of recreation and parks, and then became the emergency manager for the city of Los Angeles, where I had the pleasure to work alongside with Jenny and John and the Emergency Management Network of Los Angeles as the director of the Business Operations Center. So that title literally is a fancy title to say that we were the liaison or the VAL with the city of Los Angeles alongside with the county of Los Angeles with Gene O'Donnell, and making sure that the second largest city in the nation is connected and understanding what a VOAD is and what they do. And many other factors that I've done. Fun facts, I responded to over 10 significant emergency federally declared disasters. I am a PIO, and especially in Spanish. I'm currently your AFN coordinator, and I do teach for CSTI, the University of Southern California, and the University of Laverne. A little fun fact, I'm a dog mommy of a beautiful 8-year-old named Luca. So he's a beautiful little Maltese. But it's very important to understand that nothing I can do is based without a team. And so as many of my colleagues just mentioned, we want to make sure that we specify that we are here to support, that the position is here is bridging the gap between the county and the VOAD and other non-governmental organizations utilizing the whole community approach. We know as government, we cannot do this alone. We also know that there's many things that we can do, right? But the fact is we're bridging that gap. We know that whole community is very key and very important to be successful. So our purpose, fundamental. We are embracing the 4Cs. We embrace it with our approach. We want to identify the roles and responsibilities of the operational area and the non-governmental stakeholders. So what do we do? Like, how do we work with them? And then how do we identify how public and non-governmental organizations' capabilities are integrated across core emergency processes that the county and the state utilizes here in Santa Clara County? And we try to do that because we understand that it's an endeavor to bring together and develop those relationships. I think that's the common theme we're all hearing is that relationship development. How do we do this? By strengthening collaboration between the VOAD and our county. We want to narrow those gaps between the county government and our organization. And then we want to enhance the quality and effectiveness of the county's response and recovery capabilities by augmenting resources and situational awareness with the non-governmental sector through the VOAD. County's OEM is to maximize the inclusion and effective use of non-government resources. That is what we know. And we know that we could effectively do that through the utilization of our NGOs and the VOAD. Our program goals is very similar to what Valerie and John said, but we want to support. John's quoted it. I'm stealing your quote, John. I know you always say this, but yeah, we lead from behind. We're here to help you. We're here to support, to see where we can go. We want to build. Where do you need our subject matter expertise to assist, right? You guys are here to help leverage the services for our residents that we cannot provide. We look to the VOAD to help build that. We're providing the emergency management response. We're doing the emergency management focus on recovery, but we need to leverage you, the subject matter experts of NGOs, and what you do daily, and build those relationships and assist in helping cadre build to their support teams. We advocate. We want to shine and share the good work that we know all the NGOs and RCBOs and FBOs and everybody does. When we get to know a new organization, we're bringing them to the table and asking them to be part of the VOAD. And we unite, and that's how we unite. In Los Angeles, NLA is very robust. There was a group called BAPS Charities that was not part of the organization until approximately 2021. And the reason why, they reached out to assist us during COVID when I was the director of Business Operations Center. First thing I said, great, let's work together. But I need to introduce you to Yosef. Yosef is our program manager for EMLA, and I would love for you to be part of that VOAD. And why? Because we want to unify the both. Because unity is strength. Where there's teamwork and collaboration, wonderful things can be achieved. And wonderful things were achieved during that partnership and many other partnerships. The main topics and key activities is exactly what Valerie said. We are the critical link between the county and other government agencies here within our OA. And we work through this process called SEMS, the Standard Emergency Management Systems. So we also believe that everything starts at the local level. And then we go through the state and then federal if needed. We also make sure that we establish through the partnerships with the VOAD and everything, same thing as Valerie mentioned, establish, foster, and maintain relationships. That is one of the key things, because we can know policy, we can know procedure, we can know everything we do, but if we don't have those relationships established and we don't know you by name, then it's very hard to make sure that we all have the end goal, because we do have the same goal, which is to serve and be a part of our community. We want to coordinate engagement, and we will guide and support long-term recovery. So great thing that our office has opened up to also is we do have a recovery coordinator. So during long-term recovery, I will be hand in hand with a recovery coordinator to make sure that those services that we need to provide is in alignment, because we understand the VOAD and the LTR have their mission, but we want everybody to know that there is support from our county. And as mentioned, and I think I've said it 4 or 5 times, we follow the technical assistance services and everything else that John and Valerie does. The one caveat we have on this end is we also work directly with the state's Business Operations Center. So we do have the private NGO coordination also in this position. I mentioned some of the people that we work with, and we're not good if we don't work with you. And we talk a lot about preparedness. So I'm going to focus on that preparedness section. A little different that we're able to do, and I stole this straight from our playbook with EMLA and working with other VOADs in Southern California, is we want to bring the NGOs to the planning table. It's not about just the Go Kids or just about the preparedness groups. We want their subject matter expertise involved in our planning. So if you are a mass feeding and you're the state's mass feeding person, such as a Salvation Army, we want you on the table, because we understand that you have subject matter expertise that will assist us in our plans. And then same thing with response and with recovery. We want to build out those levels and work with the sub-working groups or the support functional teams to support the ideas and the missions of that kind of response. We are there with you, just like Valerie mentioned. We will be the conduit. We sit in the management section, so we do have the ear of the EOC director, and we work directly with the liaison. And I just put it on terms, but the technical term would be the private NGO coordinator. And we will communicate where the same structure that Valerie is utilizing for the state, we will be utilizing here in our area in the county of county of Santa Clara. We utilize the same structure in various other locations, and we've got the information from 4 other counties that actually have a liaison. It's what I learned recently through National VOAD and meeting a lot of people is our state is actually very different. We have many counties that don't have VOADs, but we're the state with the most counties with the most VOADs, because most people have it at the only state or maybe regional level. So that's an amazing factor, because we will be able to utilize it at all 3 levels, and we have a huge bench that we can work together for response and recovery. I'm not going to more detail that because that is exactly how we do things. I wanted to do this. I play sports. That was my background. I come from recreation. I come from community base. I played varsity and JV basketball. Don't let my height fool you. I was a great forward, but I knew that this team, we couldn't win or we couldn't tie if we didn't do it together. Me just as the forward is not good enough. The center was not good enough. We had to work as a collaborative team to be successful, to bring anything, our wins, our losses, but we did it together. So alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. And that is the goal that we have at the county level, is to bridge our special districts, our cities, and the county governments together. Because together we know we can. Thank you.
That is awesome. I love that. The best part is together we know we can. Thank you so much. This was great. And what this did is I hope you all see that interweaving, I mean, one of the hardest things for many of us during blue skies, when we aren't exposed to disaster and how everybody works so well together, is that we're in our own worlds, right? And we try to come together. And now I hope that this is kind of emphasizing and reminding us all just how many players are out there supporting us. I would love to go to Marcia. Marcia, I ate up a little bit of your time, but please jump in, and David and I, with the National VOED presentation, will adjust as needed because we are a little over time, but this has been exceptional.
Oh, we'll be good. It's fine. Thank you to everyone. Can you see me? Because I had hid, you can see me? Okay. No, Cindy can't. I don't know. Well, you've seen me before, so I hid my video view and now I can't see how to tell it to come back. So if you can see me, hi. If you can't, next time. All right. I'll just put up this slide about the organization of voluntary organizations active in disaster and local government. And just start with Cindy Stewart, who's on the call, she's a retired emergency manager from the Santa Clara County Office of Emergency Management. And I am a retired emergency manager from the city of Cupertino and West Valley Mission Community College District, and a bunch of other cities in Santa Clara County and outside. And so when we were emergency managers, our organizations were, well, I was Cupertino, so I was the office of one. And so everything that the emergency manager needed to do to train the staff, to plan the emergency operations center, to work with our disaster service worker volunteers and all of that, that took up all of the time. And I knew that out there was, a plethora of faith-based and community-based organizations that I knew very little about. And I just didn't know how I was ever going to get out to them. And then I met Cadre. Cadre was networking all of those folks together. And so I realized as local government, I need to be connected to Cadre because Cadre has all the relationships. And then when a disaster happens, I just have to call Cadre and they can tell me who's available. So I don't have to have another 100+ organizations calling me directly during a disaster. So when we retired, we said, let's strengthen the Cadre now so that it's even more of a help to local government, because it's every city and most of the cities have only one person. And so we can now be that subject matter expert. And we do speak SEMS, we do speak local government emergency management, and we do speak nonprofit emergency management. So it does give us that sweet spot to be able to blend and make sure that we're including everyone. And our goal is to include everyone. So on the VOAD side, when there's a disaster, the NorCal VOAD, the state VOAD, the state VAL, the FEMA VAL, and Cadre get on calls and listen to what's needed. And then the VOADs in the other counties may offer assistance to us if we say we have a need and we can't fill it. The great part is having the state and FEMA valves is that they tell us what programs are coming that are going to benefit the community, so we can make sure that we're on top of that. And make sure that Jackie knows at the county that to keep that information available to any individuals that might call them looking for assistance, and to point them back to the VOAD. And then prompting this, our current desire to create this committee is that Cadre supported the CZU fire in Santa Cruz because they don't have a VOAD, and they were struggling to support the community because all of the organizations that directly support the community in Blue Skies were there for Gray Skies, but they didn't really talk to each other. And so it took them a year to stand up the long-term recovery and case management for the Santa Cruz County communities, which was, in my opinion, it's devastating. If I was a victim of fire or my house burned down, and it was a year before case management started up to help me navigate everything that was going on. You know, I've probably filed my FEMA application, and probably the Red Cross or some organization has maybe paid to put me in a hotel for a minute or given me some food, but I do not have a path out of the disaster. And so in Santa Clara County, our vision is that our path out of disaster can start within 30 to 60 days, that we will have immediate resources available for the community to be able to register if they need help with cleanup, or if they need help with, they're going to need help in general, so that they can register, and we will have the database of who is asking for help immediately, and then we'll continue to track those. But to do that in a county that has so many resources, we've had to change our model a little bit. That we had things called function teams. The function teams were mass care, access and functional needs, immigrant support, mental health, and more. There are 20 of them, but now instead of just making the function team be the people that have come and found the VOAD, found Cadre, because we're not out in the community. We don't provide direct services except to the non-governmental and faith organizations, that we're going to go out and find everyone in Santa Clara County that performs a specific function. So we know the Team Rubicons. Susie just happens to be on my screen right now. We know the people that can do cleanup. We did a whole presentation on that yesterday. You can go back and watch that if you want. But to bring these networks together. So pre-disaster, even if you don't think you have a disaster role, but let's say you are supporting the unhoused, we want to bring everyone that supports the unhoused to a table so that they can build relationships and share resources and be resilient. And so if we know who all is out there and they know each other, that's going to make Santa Clara County stronger. And in a disaster, we'll have direct communication links to mobilize people to help the individuals that have been impacted. So it's really for us now building more and more relationships to create that strong network that can be connected to Jackie at the county, so that when they hear from the community that things are needed, that we can tell them where those things are. And then in some cases, like for cleanup, when City of San Jose had their flood in 2017, we did take Team Rubicon and we connected them directly with the operations section of San Jose's EOC, Emergency Operations Center, so that they could coordinate cleanup. Now we have crisis cleanup, so there's another person that'll be part of that conversation, but we're there to make the connections and then keep track of who's doing what, so that we're not duplicating efforts. And that's the big part, is that we can make sure that we know what the nonprofits are doing. working with Jackie, we know what government is doing, and we can make sure that if government's doing it, the nonprofits don't have to. But if the nonprofits are doing it, then the government has an option to not, and to just try to maximize the use of the resources. So I think I'll stop there, but we're all here for the same reason, that we do believe for, as local government emergency managers now turn nonprofit, it's like we have a ton of resources in Santa Clara County, and we just need to make sure that they're all connected to us so that we can provide the information to them that they need and provide the information to the county that they need, and that we're all one big team. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. I love that slide. All kinds of good nuggets. I love this. So we are fine on time. David and I are going to adjust a little bit. Right. Welcome back. And we have a very exciting presentation from David Rauer, National VOAD Long-Term Recovery Group Chair. And I would like to turn over the floor to him.
Thank you so much. And if
Let me
I can
find
get
a
my
slide.
screen up.
Oh my God, yeah. Here we go.
Okay.
Wait, I'm not seeing it. Hold on.
Oh, you're good, Marcia. He has it. He's got it.
Oh, he has it. Okay,
We up?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay,
You're off
Good
the
to know.
hook.
awesome.
Great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to come on, and hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of the model that National VOAD offers out to everybody to use in their own way, right? This is not about National VOAD and the partners coming in and telling you, you need to do it this way. It's about sharing what we have over the years developed and say, this has worked. You take part of this, you take all of it, whatever fits your community. Because as we've heard, we believe all disasters are local and all recoveries are local. So keep that in mind as we go forward. And what we do from National VOAD and the members and partners within National VOAD, we come in and support your work, however you need us to support it. So I do want to make one side comment here. I've heard the term COAD often, and it's an ongoing thing that, and you may not be aware, but National VOAD is negotiating with a chemical company from Ohio who has this as their trademark, I believe, or they've registered it. So National VOAD is asking people to start calling their organizations local VOADs. Just that term COAD is something that's becoming, negotiated. So just realize that. They're not going to come after you right now, but no, you should have that in the back of your head. Okay? Thank you. All right, so National VOAD is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, membership-based organization that helps to build resiliency in communities nationwide. It is a forum where the organizations, the members, share knowledge, resources throughout the disaster cycle, whether it be in preparation, response, recovery, mitigation, and it's to help all survivors and communities recover. National VOAD was founded in 1970, has more than 100 members, and is guided by the 4 C's. You've heard them already: cooperation, communication, coordination, and collaboration. National VOAD members provide the leadership that helps impacted communities recover and delivers hope. These concepts have been used, tested. This model has been experienced over time and serve as National VOAD's best recommendations. You notice these are recommendations for successful community disaster response. So you then have a chance to look at all we offer out and say, these are the things that work for us, and these things, I don't think we're going to take that or this one, and that's perfectly fine. Seen this work in situations where there were 120 people in a long-term recovery group, and they had, robust committees. And I've seen it worked around a table when there were 12 to 15 people in a recovery and everything was ad hoc. In other words, Sammy, would you do this week? And Georgette, would you do this week? And so forth. And it worked because they adapted things to help themselves and to know what to do. So we don't dictate, we just come in and support and give you these options. If you want to find out what our organizations do, the members, go to nationalvoad.org and you can click on the member identifications and find out what they do. And this next piece, Jackie has stated, Jenny has put in the chat, relationships. If I can't say enough ever about relationships, because building relationships makes a difference. And if you are the ones that are building this, and you are, before disaster hits, the quick turnaround to getting people into recovery can be as little as 2 to 3 weeks, as compared to, as you heard Marcia say, one of the organizations that took a year before they got things going. So that's the importance of you getting this started and doing this preparedness and warning. So great stuff to begin with. So an LTRG is a response to a particular disaster at a particular place in time. The LTRG does not continue on forever. Okay, it is something that builds, works, and when the disaster recovery is done, it steps back and goes into hibernation or becomes a local COAD or a local VOAD. And so that can be, and then it can be started up again for the next disaster, right? We know that sadly disasters are coming more and more often in the same areas. So that's what this does for you once you have it organized. The Stafford Act identifies the 3 different levels of disasters. And as far as we, the members of National VOAD, are concerned, these do not dictate whether or not we come in, right? These dictate what kind of resources you get from the state and the federal government. But we, the members, can come in and all of these, and oftentimes we will go into the undeclared to help out, knowing that the resources are not as big as you would be if it's a federally declared or a state declared disaster. So we look at things like federal declared. You can look at like 9/11, right? That's a major disaster, or Katrina, right? And maybe some of the smaller ones as we get down to state declared, maybe the fertilizer plant explosion in West Texas. Okay, those are, but it doesn't matter what type of disaster it is. You, the community, the neighbors should be ready to be involved and embrace the recovery in your own community. You should not wait for outsiders to come in and give you resources. You should automatically step forward and start that work. And whether or not you get outside help will be determined, but you need to step forward first and get it done. And as I've already said, all disasters are local, and the most common type of disaster is the undeclared. And so you need to be prepared for those. All right, this sequence of delivery, I'm not going to go into each and every step, but know that you look at this and see all the way to the left, the orange, voluntary organizations. It comes in and it talks about what needs to be done right at the beginning. And some of the organizations, that come in right away, like the Southern Baptists, are known for coming in for helping to cut down trees and cleaning streets and mass feeding. Red Cross comes in, and so forth. And so that's beginning. Then it goes to the insurance first, then FEMA comes in, SBA can be involved, back to FEMA, and then you notice at the end again, the voluntary organizations. And that's where VOAD helps you, right? At the beginning and even at the end. And after the federal leaves, the VOADs are there covering everything and doing what they can to keep recovery going, and actually oftentimes running it or supporting running it. And so that's what we're doing. And the national partners will be there for you to be able to help keep it going and to bring in funds. We'll be able to bring in volunteers to help you in many different ways. So we look at this slide and realize, yes, there's a way to do it, okay? But knowing that the VOAD organizations are the ones that are most active and most often the ones there from beginning to end, right? It may not be the same VOAD organization as far as the partners go, but it will be a VOAD organization hanging out, staying with you through to the end of your disaster recovery. So there's a lot of ways to look at disaster cycle. In this case, it's developed in layers. You will see another version coming next. So if you look at the disaster, which is the lower left-hand corner, it identifies that the community reaction towards recovery and then preparedness and mitigation should be happening before that disaster hits, right? And then once the disaster hits, the response, responding to and after disaster strikes should make a difference as well, as because of your preparedness and mitigation, it comes through that way. This slide notes several important takeaways. The early emergency and relief, which is identified, in the maroon and the green, portions of a response are aimed at saving lives, right? That's the initial, that's getting food out to people because they don't have food, getting water out because they need it, temporary shelter and so forth, right? That's what happens in these two sections. And they help in also stabilizing structures so that further damage can't happen in the area. So then look at the orange line and you realize how much longer the orange line is, and that's long-term recovery. And sadly, many people don't understand what long means in recovery, right? Realize, I'm in New Jersey. We are still doing some repairs for Superstorm Sandy from 2012. Sadly, Louisiana still repairing places from Katrina, and that was 2005. So long term has continued to spread out, right, and be even longer. So the next slide shows us phase of disaster another way. Jenny, pass it to you.
All right, I asked if I could speak to this one because it's very near and dear to my heart with respect to what is recovery. And just to launch from what David just said, you know, recovery has its own phases. They're short and long. And that's why the title of this presentation says short and long term. It's really important for you all to recognize, you know, we've been in Blue Skies a long time, and just always say when, not if, and know that our community is in one of these phases right now, right? And we are in that preparedness. We are in that mitigation, right? We're trying to be as ready and as sustainable and empowered as possible. But there is some portion of our community that is still recovering from a disaster, large or small. And somebody's working on that. So just keep that in mind. What does it mean to be prepared so that when a large disaster happens, we are all able to mount our forces and the goodness and the funding and the lack of funding, because you won't always have funding. What do you do if you don't have funding? Like, you know, we've heard, don't wait for the funding to come. You know, be ready to take action and mount those resources that can start filling in gaps while we try to figure out funding. We should always be well funded. The sad truth is we may not be. Response isn't just about, and I know we know this highlights what long-term recovery is. Response is definitely not just about that emergency staving of the bleeding into our functional units in a community. Okay, it's not just about structures and systems, it's about the people. And we need to see who needs help. These are the individuals that are actually going to help us help them and help everybody else recover. So the sooner we can start getting people recovered, the sooner we're going to see volunteers and helping hands. So let's just keep that in mind. Where we move to is that recovery phase. And, you know, we've touched on that quite a bit. That's the purpose of this presentation, is to really drive home what is recovery and then what is really long-term recovery, because that's where we need the help. And that's why we're really focusing today on this and developing a committee and having the workshop on May 14th. So being here today to talk about this, listening to the National VOAD, talk about what it means, knowing that we have this strong support network for when we do have the disaster. 100% we're going to have our calls. We're going to have daily calls, maybe twice daily calls. And guess what? Somebody's going to be in that National VOAD call, or National VOAD is going to be wondering how we're doing, what we're doing, and they're going to be tapping into us from the top down. You know, there's people out there that are going to help. But what happens is the next disaster, right? So what happens to all of those people that have been there? They need to disperse, and we need to be holding down the fort for that long-term recovery. And it's so important to establish our disaster case management network, because that's what drives long-term recovery. I will go back over to you, David.
Okay, thank you. The mitigation part of this, mitigation, of course, is making things better. So next time a disaster hits, you're not going to have as much of a problem in recovery. Something as simple as taking your air conditioner, and it's been outside on the ground, got damaged because of flooding. Now you put it up 4 feet in the air, and that flood comes, it's 2-3 feet. It doesn't get touched, so therefore now it is better, and you don't have as much damage from the next disaster. And of course, preparedness, readiness, you know, that's part of that circle. It's an ongoing piece. And I'm so glad that you folks are identifying that this is important, and you're doing things right now before the disaster hits. All right, so the principle of 10, this is in flux, right? There's a standard that's been around, but as you heard from the examples of Superstorm Sandy and Katrina, that things are changing. And so, oops, okay. So how about that? The graph didn't come up. All right, no big deal. It's basically saying that if rescue lasts 10 days, right? That's where the emergency things and sheltering and emergency food and so forth is happening. Then relief would be 10 times that, so it would be 100 days. And recovery then would be approximately 10 times the 100, or 1,000 days, or basically 3 years. And this is where that thing in flux is, right? So that 3 years can be 5, 7, or whatever. And so that's why it's probably in need of upgrading or changing, but we still use it just to give an example of what could take place, or what can you expect to take place during this time. Right? Okay, then the emotional impact. And Jenny has this one again.
David and I are going to team on this one. The reason when he and I were going over this, I jumped on this slide is because it has been my go-to for so many years, to really help our partners and our communities that don't remember that this disaster really happened and don't understand that there's still people out there trying to recover. It is a long, long journey. It's like any injury, right? And one of our key factors in this disaster long-term recovery process is to ensure that people can emotionally recover. Because if they're stuck in a place of trauma, grief, they're not going to be moving forward with our resources anywhere near where we could be empowering them to get. And emotional wellness, providing tools for people to cope are so critical, and they're very simple tools. They can be implemented at a LAC or a disaster resource center or a MARC. When we have those first resources available, we have greeters who are signing people in who have training, simple training, and it helps to move through. I mean, I've had so many people respond to me after they see this graph and say, I had no idea. This is so great, and it is so true. So just know that, this is just, I want everybody to have access to this if they haven't seen it yet. It's on my own website in LA. It's on a bunch of other websites now. Anytime I present, somebody grabs it if it's not already there. I don't, that's really all I wanted to note. I don't need to get too into this, but I will defer back to David to kind of hit on any high points that I've missed.
Oh, good stuff. So just want to add a little bit here is that major drop from heroic honeymoon down to the bottom is when people start realizing that those who were here to begin with, FEMA, Red Cross, and those other organizations have left town. And now it's like, who are we going to rely on? How are we going to get through this? And then as they start realizing that the long-term recovery group and other agencies are there, then they start climbing that out of that difficult valley and start realizing, we can do this together. And we have case managers and we have organizations coming in and supporting us. And then we get to the end. And if you look closely at this graph, the acceptance adjustment piece on the right is slightly higher than all on the left just before the disaster hits. Why? Because people realize once they've been through something like this, that they can recover. So they come out just a little bit better in that. And of course, yeah, the emotional impact is just incredibly difficult to deal with, especially when you're in it. And that sense of hope has kind of been beaten out of you, at least for a little bit of time. So yeah, Jenny, this is a great thing, right? And
I
good for
love
you.
this. David, I'll add one more thing here. You just made me think of what, another piece that I really am passionate about. And it's, when we have all of our partners, we have funding, it's all, just coming at us at the beginning of a disaster. This is a critical component to help funders hold on to their money and resources, because this doesn't change. This isn't going to flex for the most part too terribly much when a community has been hit hard with a disaster. You're going to look at a year and then you're going to start, like, people think they're fine. I got this. I'm tough. I'd be one of those people, by the way. And I'm realizing later, right? A year down the road, 6 months, 8 months, wait a minute, things are waning. I my family's dropped away. I don't have, the help I thought I had. And that's when disaster case management really hits, they start hitting the high point. And those resources are needed. And that's something that Center for Disaster Philanthropy does such a great job with. Another partner, if you're not familiar with them, and Marcia, I will include that resource. They really highlight, and I love the job they do at ensuring that partners like you, funders at the national level, hold on to their funds for as long as possible so that trickle down can happen and real recovery can occur. So next slide.
Yep, thank you. All right. This is identifying a number of different ways in which you can organize your long-term recovery organization. And understand, it doesn't really matter how you organize it, in the sense that whether you have a catchy name or not a catchy name. It's basically all about what you do and how you do it. Okay. So I'm going to go through and identify the difference between what we identify as an LTRO and LTRC, yes. But it's about you and your organization, how you set it up, right? So the best long-term recovery groups are the ones that have representation from every sector of their community, right? You look at the faith-based, you look at government, you look at the civic organizations, you look at business, you look at industries, and you're pulling everybody in, right? You're also looking at your community, and your recovery organization needs to have representation from every sect within your community, right? So it looks like your community, your recovery organization looks like community itself, okay? It has included in there the differences in ages, right? Because you don't want to leave out the young, you don't want to leave out the seniors, right? And you also can't leave out those with functional needs. They need to be included as well within your recovery group. And one of the things that was driven home to me in the midst of organizing long-term recovery group is that you need to have people who have been directly impacted within your organization, right? Because they're the ones that will keep you on course. They will drive you because they're the ones that aren't in their homes. They're the ones that are dealing with the loss of their home or their materials or whatever else. And they're the ones that need to be involved as well. So realize they have to be part of it, okay? And since once FEMA has done its work and left, okay, it's the community now that has to run the organization. And of course, coordination is the entire important piece of this. And the understanding here is first, do no harm as we go out there and do it. So what about an LTRO? Okay. This operates under the guidance of another agency, right? Or independently on its own. This works to address the needs of the community and individuals following a disaster, just like an LTRG does, okay? These may be entirely faith-based, but not necessarily, or a collaboration of different faith-based and secular agencies. In LTRC, what the C is, yeah, right out of my head. How great is that? Committee, okay? The committee has agency representatives who cooperate in addressing the needs of the community, and it pulls in the community and government and faith-based organizations. So really not much difference there. And in interfaith, it's basically maybe 2 or 3 churches that get together and run their recovery. And I've heard it as small as 1 church doing it. In a small community down in Mississippi, there's 1 church that's organizing the whole thing and running their recovery. And they have people from the community doing that. So that would be an idea or thought, knowing that it doesn't have to be real large in order to work. Okay. Now, we talk about something called an unmet needs table, which kind of fits in all these. An unmet needs table is basically where there's the case managers sit around the table bringing their clients' lists of needs to this meeting, and there are funders sitting around the table, right? So I may have some money from my national church, right? And the person sitting next to me may have money from their local church. And then somebody over here has someone from a local civic organization. And they comes up and it says, okay, here's what this family needs to get recovered. And they may need a new front walk. And I'll say, I'll fund that. And then the next thing is, they also need some flooring in the kitchen. And, one of the other organizations says, I'll fund that. And so that's what the unmet needs table is. It brings in the funders in order to be able for the community and the clients to recover. So no matter what type of organizational structure you have, okay, the most important piece is whether it functions in your community, in your disaster, the way you need it to function. So keep that in mind. Elements of organizing. Okay, so we already said this about how you need to make sure you have people from all sectors of the community, whether they're from nonprofit, business, faith-based, doesn't matter. You look around and make sure your organization looks like your community. And the more community leaders you bring in, the better you're going to bring in resources for you. Okay. Mission statements. Well, every organization needs to have one. It identifies why you exist. And there are numerous examples of mission statements on the National VOED long-term, or in the National VOED long-term recovery guide, which is on the nvoed.org website. And you can go on that anytime and look at them. Organizational documents, basically the administrative structure, how it's going to run, what it looks like. Okay. And so these, again, have templates for you to use at national or nvoed.org. Okay. So what kind of resources you may have? What you need to do to help you is do a bit of asset mapping, right? Looking around the community, what's already there, what strengths and what areas do you have in your community, use them as a resource, and then you can start looking at other ways to bring in help. And don't overlook the small businesses, right? The pizza shop down the corner, right, may be able to have reduced or free pizzas for the volunteer workers to come in once a week, right? There's a resource for you, all right? And things like that give support. Even though it's not a big deal, it helps in the long run. And of course, then financial management. And you're going to run your organization as a nonprofit. And if you decide you're going to be a 501c3 on your own, that is your choice. Just realize that's I've been told 9 to 12 months in order to get that truly up and running. So you want to connect early on to a 501c3 to bring in early donations. And then if you decide to become a 501c3 on your own, then you can transfer funds. But there's a number of agencies out there that have done that work for long-term recovery organizations in the past and are willing to be part of it. Okay, administration. You need to build trust within the community, right? And that should be identified as how you've made your policies and guidelines, okay, in order to help people. And that's going to bring some of that strength and support from the community, okay? Flexibility is important, right? Things change. You need to be flexible within what you do and know that's an important part of any recovery. You may have some paid staff, right? And if you do, you may need to make sure that you have human resource policies already in place, as well as a management structure, so that there's no questions as to who leads who and what the roles are. And you're bringing in donations, right? You need to be clear and identify those things that take place within your the funds that come in from your donors, and if they're earmarked for certain things, making sure that they're identified and listed and you use those properly so that you are a credible organization. And realize fundraising goes on not just at the beginning, but continues to go through, right? Through the length of time you're open. Jenny, any comments here? Okay.
I don't I don't have comments. I think what I'll do is I'll jump to, just in the interest of time, I'll just highlight for everybody the slide, maybe it was the slide before or the slide before that. One before, there we go. I put this in chat just to kind of bookmark for us. This is actually bringing us to our symposium, which is May 14th. Okay, so this is why we're here today, is to lay the framework for what do we do next. And I just wanted to take advantage of this, slide and this moment to say, please, please do join us. That's the next step in this process. So it would be up to us, those people who want to participate on the community committee to either be on the committee or to be some sort of a resource funder, etc. So look forward to that. And LTRG is built up to stand down, while a long-term recovery committee or long-term recovery organization or whatever you call yourself, right, is meant to hold the fort down and develop, similar to what the VOAD does, but with a very specific focus on long-term recovery, develop those resources and that process, specifically disaster case management and funders' resources to support the unmet needs that will come forth as long-term recovery continues.
I put the link in our chat for the symposium part 2. So you can just click on that if you haven't already registered.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, I'm not going to spend much time on this because I'm going to touch on each of these as we go forward here. Know that the big thing about this graph is the fact that everything's interconnected, right? That's the idea behind this, that each of these pieces can be used, not if you decide to have all of them, that they are in there and they work together and have strong connection in what goes on within a long-term recovery group. There is a difference between disaster casework and disaster case management. Realize that, okay? Basically, disaster casework is early on after the disaster hits. There is no vetting of needs. It's organizations coming in and helping those that are able or in need of things at that point. Okay, so it's not about having disaster case managers come and do all the work behind the scenes before a person or a family gets help. It's that giving help to survivors that they need, right? Or then it comes down to disaster case management. That is basically where it is a time-limited process that the disaster case manager works hand in hand with the impacted, the family or individual, to plan and achieve their goals for recovery, right? And each one's going to be a little different because some families may need just a little bit, another family may need their whole house rebuilt. But that's what disaster case manager does. It does the vetting, saying that or seeing that, okay, this is what the people have, this is what they need, here's the gap. And that's what takes place at the unmet needs table. If the client or the family qualifies for that work. Where in disaster case work, it's not about qualifications, just this is what they need immediately. And we have some great organizations that do training for disaster case management and having it done, right? And there are 3 or 4 organizations that do that. Construction management. So this is, as it says, watching, overseeing the repair, getting homes rebuilt so that they are in what we identify as safe, sanitary, secure, and functional condition. It's not improving the value of the house in the sense that if you had a laminate countertop in the kitchen, you're not getting a granite countertop. That's not what it's about, right? It's putting it back the way it was, or as close to the way it was, so that you are in your home with those things, safe, sanitary, secure, and functional. I am seeing more and more across the country where construction management is being outsourced, not necessarily being specifically under the LTRG control, but having a partner come in and do it, and they're working hand in hand. And so the construction manager is hired by somebody who was then assigned to the LTRG. Is that just a recent change? It's not going to last. I don't know, but I've just seen much more of that happening around the country. Volunteer management. This is where you are able to stretch the donated dollars, right? Bringing in volunteers to do some of the general work makes all the difference in the world instead of hiring a contractor, right? Yes, you want licensed contractors to do the electrical work, to do the HVAC for the air conditioning and heating, but putting up drywall, painting, putting up trim, hanging doors, and all that kind of stuff can be done by volunteers. And that's where you stretch those dollars so that more people can get helped with the money that comes in. Communications. Boy, if you are good at keeping the community understanding what's going on, you're going to have much more success. And it's a specialty thing. And one of the things I've seen that has worked very well is the fact that the local LTRG will reach out to a nearby college and get those communication majors involved, and the colleges are more than willing to send their students out to help, and they come up with great ideas. So it might be something to think about as you start putting together your ideas for your LTRG. Donations management is a great thing because you get donations, and maybe you're getting good donations, and you need a warehouse, and you need somebody to run it, and there's an organization that will do that for you. But there is a serious downside. And here's what, example. In New Jersey, Superstorm Sandy hit right at the end of October. 2 days later, there's a snowstorm. 2 days after that, a couple organizations got a box truck full of flip-flops. Now, I don't know what you do with flip-flops in November and December, but we got flip-flops. So that can be an issue, right? You get the wrong things. And so one of the things we often push is say, yes, you want specific donations, put that information out, but also right from the beginning, ask for dollars, because you can then identify what you need and go get it instead of having to continue to reach out and find it. ESC, emotional and spiritual care. So important. In my faith-based background, we feel this underpins everything that goes on in recovery. No matter what you're doing, you need to be aware of the emotional and spiritual needs of those who've been impacted. One of the things that I think is a great idea, and I've seen it happen, it's been very successful, is when case managers go out to interview the families, they are focused on the information, as they should be. But you send with them someone who's experienced in emotional spiritual care, and they can listen to the way things are said, and then they have an idea of, something, we need to come back and give this family some emotional spiritual care support. And it's worked really well when you have the people to do that. So an idea to keep in mind if you like that. Financial controls. Yes, so if there's one word that goes with this, in my mind, it's about transparency. If you are not having the financial controls, the donations, and all that stuff clearly identified and given out during your meetings, you're kind of hiding it, you're going to see a downward swing of people and organizations looking forward to help you. They will just stop showing up because they're not seeing it. Been involved in an LTRG, they'd come out and say, their entire monthly reporting was, we took in X amount of dollars this month, we spent this much. On to the next thing. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't work. And you go to another one and they're giving 2 pages of, hey, this is how much we came in. This is how much what the client won. This is how much went to client 37. This is how much, and this is how much, for communications and so forth. And so, transparency is important. How can you move from good intentions to actions? Jenny, you want to take this one?
Yes, and before I do, we have a question about the principle of 10.
Okay.
Rescue, recovery. What are the 3 R's here? So in other words, a little bit more clarification around the principle of 10s.
Okay, so rescue is that time when the emergency is going on and they're just trying to find people, see what they need. Are they, stuck in their homes and can't get out? That kind of thing. So that's that first rescue piece, right? The first R in that. Then we go to the relief. And relief is where you're bringing in supplies. The organizations are sending in information and people to help with the needs, right? The emergency management is stepped back because there's not an emergency going on right then. In other words, people have been found, everything's settled in the community in the sense that you're not running people to the hospital and so forth. And so that's relief. And that can take a while because we have the pieces coming in, the supplies coming in and distributing so that people show up and they get things. And so they're starting to get settled at least a little bit. And the recovery is the process for rebuilds, right? Getting people back in their homes as soon as they can, getting homes and businesses up and running again, so that it does take time to do that. And it doesn't mean that everybody is going to take that long. It's just, you may start out with, say, easy number, you may be having to repair, rebuild, 200 homes, and it might take you, the first, 4 months, you may get 5 or 6 done. Next 4 months, you may get 20 done, and then and so forth. And it builds until you get your 200, and that's why you're looking at that time frame to get to that last client that has come to your LTRG to get things rebuilt. Does that help? Okay. Great.
And yes, now we're kind of almost exactly at time. We planned it that way. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat or respond any way that works for you. You know how to reach us at Cadre. I don't want to cut anybody out of this, so we will definitely make sure that all of the questions get answered if there are any. The good news is we have a follow-up coming, and that is how we can take this information and parlay it into action, right? So please do know that our symposium with the working lunch, come get food, and then I'll bribe you to be on the committee. So please do come join us for lunch. It's 10 to 2. It's at the Red Cross in San Jose. You'll have that address, and we will be working together to look at who is going to be interested in being on a committee. But we're going to refresh this information, so anybody who didn't come can hear it. Hopefully the recording will be forwarded out amongst all of our partners. It will definitely be on the website, and I would like to make sure that you all feel comfortable, with the goal. What is our call to action? Our call to action is to, 1, please complete the survey that Marcia doesn't even know I'm going to ask her to send. I'll help her, but it's hey, do you want to be on the committee? Do you want to bring resources to the table with respect to long-term recovery groups? The next thing is just please really think about your organization and how you can bring forward your resources, whether it's funding or muscle, you know, the 3 M's. And we really hope we inspired you to join the Long-Term Recovery Committee and develop that committee, develop the name. What are we calling ourselves? As David, you know, said, it has many different forms in any community we go to. And please just look forward to examples of really successful committees, collaboratives, organizations that have worked and continue to hold up their communities when a disaster happens. You know, they're always there. Sonoma is one. San Diego, you've heard about. Los Angeles has a long-term recovery organization, and that's larcro.org, larcro.org, and you can see that that website. It's a great example of collaboration where San Diego helped us figure out what the heck we needed to do to make sure we were ready. So we'll do that at phase 2. And I really hope I've inspired many of you, and that more importantly, all of our guests have inspired you to come on the 14th. Marcia?
Thank you, Jenny. Great job, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that when you sign off of this call, another tab will show up on your computer with a very short review so that you can give us your feedback, and then we will send the information that Jenny wants us to send out. And then here's Jenny's contact information if you have more questions for her. In the chat is the information to register for the symposium and some other events. So please forward that to your colleagues that you think should be at the table. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you so much to our guests and to all of you for being here. Have a wonderful afternoon.